And we're there. Okay, let me put these side by side so I can look at my OBS and at my stream chat at the same time. That's quite a useful thing to be able to do. I was going to do low poly modeling today. I ran the poll on the Discord as usual, and it pretty much was... The answer was we don't really care what you do. I was going to do low poly modeling, but then I remembered actually I don't feel like doing that. I probably should have been doing that because that's productive and it's working towards something like a project that I'm working on. But then I figured, you know what? Oh my god, the camera speed is so fast. Then I figured, you know what? I don't really feel like doing that. I want to just experiment. I want to have a little bit of fun. So here we are. We're just going to be experimenting. There's going to be a lot of live troubleshooting. There's going to be a lot of me getting annoyed at Unreal Engine. And that's the content you tuned in for. So if you don't want that again, don't vote for it in a Discord. Just vote for stuff that you think is interesting. So let's make a... that's not how you make a new open world template level. Let's make a new open world template level. We can make this and we can save it. I will save it as open world. And very simply, we're going to just mess around with this a little bit. We've got this open world system. We're going to be playing around with this world partition system. So in theory, what I should be able to do is I should be able to say, hey, these... I can't select these individual squares is the issue. It's a little weird. Say unload selected region. So if I select this and then I say unload, it should unload and unload everything. Load regions from selection. Okay, so now I can do it like that. So I can load. And then I can say unload. No. You see, something that's this fucking simple already is giving me issues. Load region from selection. That should load everything. And then we still have this selection. Can I then delete this selection or something? Or do I just like... Oh, I can double click to move around. That's actually quite nice to be able to do. So if I just make a new selection, it infinitely keeps those selections, which actually could be quite handy to be able to do, really. I can right click and then unload. Oh, that then removes that selection, so I can unload. That makes sense. I can load. I can say this one. So what I could do in theory is say I could load these separately. This is just for debugging purposes, surely. And it doesn't even load all the way based on the cells, does it? It has to, right? There's no way that it's loading half a grid cell. It would be insane. Either way, I think I get this interface now, which I just wanted to play around with a little bit. So that's neat. So I'll just select everything and load it. In the meantime, how is everybody doing here today while I just mess about a little bit? So I want to try doing a little bit of landscaping, sculpting here. I want to try doing a little bit of maybe adding in some water. I don't know if there's anything particularly special about like a water system. I know Unreal has a water system, but I think that's more so meant for seas and oceans than it is for like rivers and ponds. But we're going to figure this out as we go along. So let's get started with the first thing here, and that is going to be our landscaping. Been doing good. Been meaning to learn about importing world machine tile builds into an open world. I'm honestly just messing about and looking at it today, getting started. So I'm probably going to do a lot of stupid shit right here today. Okay, so this default level, which we're just going to be playing around in here, has 2 layers, which is a Unreal logo shaped layer, which is cool. The material here seems to be set up to have like a line for a water level, but the level itself doesn't have any setup for water, seemingly. So I don't really know what that's all about. But this is just the flattening of the main area. Let's just keep a little bit of this in here, just because it's funny. And then all the rest, like the entire actual shape here, is controlled by this layer. And then I assume with right click I can just create a new layer. There we go. So I can do my own sculpting on this layer now. And say, yeah, add some there. And then I can set this back to 0, disappears. And it goes down to -1 as well, right? Yeah, so I can also negate it. Do these sliders go beyond the value of 1? They do not. They get automatically clamped. That's very, very good to know. And I can erase all that without affecting the underlying layers, right? I can. Fantastic. Making a whole open world. I'm just playing around with the systems to do that today. Because I am not very well versed in how world partition works and how everything surrounding that functions. And then I also, if we get to it, want to look a little bit about procedural content generation, like making a forest or something like that procedurally. Because I also don't look forward to, if I do get around to making an open world, placing every single fucking tree and rock by hand. I'm not going to do that. I'm waiting for next gen landscape tool, to be honest. Well, in the past when I've worked with Unreal, I would very much like to be able to landscape and sculpt with like my drawing tablet, but Unreal doesn't seem to have pressure sensitivity. At least it didn't like a year ago when I looked into this. It might now, I don't know. But that seemed to be quite a problematic thing. Let's see, brush size is already quite big. So like this we can add a little bit of noise into the landscape, right? And if I set the noise scale to being very low, it's very local noise, which adds like a lot of detail. So that makes sense. If I play now, I'm probably going to spawn underground. I don't, it actually spawns me on the ground. But this feels like it was, aside from the fact that it's very low poly, this feels pretty good, right? These hills, there's like a long way for me to walk. I believe this default map is like 2 by 2 kilometers. Whatever I end up doing with this eventually, hopefully, it's going to be somewhat larger. And I do believe if I want to make it larger, it's just as simple as saying I want to add some tiles and then just go to wherever I want to add them. And I can just draw them in like this, right? Yes, I can. So this is how easy it is to add in new sections. But that's just the landscaping part of it. World partition, I believe, works separately from that. I don't know. The thing that I'm curious to figure out, and we're going to try this out in a moment, but I think these sections load and unload as a whole, right? But then the world partition, if I place actors into these, the actors within those will then load and unload based on these cells from the world partition. And it's just once it's not in any loaded cell anymore, the entire grid panel unloads for the landscape. I believe that's how it works. That's how it makes sense to me, anyway. Yeah, I currently have a... Yeah, I don't yet, anyway. That's quite a big map. 10 kilometers. Like, even walking from this side to this side probably would take quite a while. I'm not going to do that. And I'm also probably not going to do anything too much with any of this stuff. But let's try to No. Let's just try to sculpt. Make these mountains a little bit bigger. So that's the one thing that I'm a little bit worried about, is how am I going to then connect these two pieces together? Can I like mask out something? I would like to have this visible but not be affected. Did you use a height map, or did you to make the Unreal logo? No, this is just the default template map. I didn't make that myself. Like none of this. I only added a little bit of noise to it. None of this I made myself. This is just the default template map when you make a open world level in Unreal. Let's see. I suppose what I could do, maybe, there's probably just, if I go into sculpting, there's probably some option here that I seem to remember. If I flatten this, that kind of meets it in the middle, right? So that kind of works. Like if I just do this. There's got to be a better solution for that. I can smooth this out then, and that kind of gets me what I want, but not really. I would very much like YouTube to fuck off with this little icon here, which is making it really difficult to read chat. Let's see, can I pop out the chat and we'll get rid of that icon? That's a little bit better. I think you can sculpt and then use the smooth tool. Yeah, but really, I should have an option to say, hey, just don't impact what happens here. And let me sculpt here. And then I still have to smooth it out, obviously. But seemingly, the fact that you can't mask bits out is kind of fucking moronic. But that might just be me not... like. I suppose maybe what you could maybe do is like make a ramp that's just straight. And then make it very wide. If you just add a ramp like this, yeah, that doesn't really help, does it? I suppose it's a start. Can I make this like 25,000 wide? Okay, you can make it wide, very wide like this. So I suppose that's kind of a halfway acceptable, and then we can smooth this out, and that kind of works now, right? And then smoothing this. That's a decent workaround. Still feel like this should probably be better. Is it shift for negative? It's shift for negative. And once again, I would vastly prefer this to have pressure sensitivity, which maybe at this point it does. And I just don't know it. It's always got to be an option. What I do like, though, I'm already complaining a lot, but what I do like is the fact that it has just a pre-built noise brush where you can just like add some noise and make things look more high detail without too much trouble. Because otherwise this would be a fucking pain to do. Like adding surface detail. Also wonder if I can say, hey, set this to 25. I can. Okay. So I can very easily just do broad strokes and add some detail to the landscape here. Which is probably more detail than altogether needed. But if I even set this like much smaller, it makes the landscape a little bit less smooth, which in my opinion generally just looks better, right? Like I prefer this look. It depends on the context and what you're trying to make, first and foremost, but I generally prefer looking out over this than over this, right? It's just a tiny little thing. Hydro brush on top will add noise. and will look nice like erosion. Let's take a look at that. We've got erosion and hydro. Oh. So we've got... Let's maybe make the brush size a little smaller again. So we've got erosion, which I have to assume erodes away at... on a plane, seemingly? Or at edges? Okay, and let's see, hydro. Maybe this needs to be a stronger brush. Oh, that seems to follow some kind of like fluid dynamic. So if this was a river coming down here, the way it would flow down, that's the shape this makes, more or less, on hills. I mean, it's different from noise, but that is quite nice. Like that is nice to have. And then we have the rain amount, which will probably, yeah, so that makes it stronger. The amount of sediment that the water can carry, larger values will result in more erosion. Let's try this on a different hill now. Just as like a clean slate. Let's go the hill over here. I like this one. It is very nice how like intelligent this is in making interesting shapes. And then we can iterate this a lot. So I was expecting that to lag out very badly, but it doesn't. And then rain distance scale. I mean, you can make these two things come together and then go into your sculpting brush and start like smaller probably. Which again, having pressure there would be nice, but you can start like making this into a river, right? Like this is a very bad river, obviously, but... And this also looks like something else entirely, so let's... let's make this into a slightly different shape. On the documentation, its description is like the erosion done by water. Normal erosion is meant to simulate wind erosion. Yeah, I figured the normal erosion here seemed to very much like cut off the edges of hills. But let me just try to... Actually, let's just make a hill of our own. Does at least this work? That works. Okay, that's nice. Oh, that's a little too much. That's a little much. So let's make like a couple of hills of our own here. Just to have something to work with. That's not particularly great, but it'll do. So normal erosion, if we make this a little bit smaller again, and we say the tool strength just full on. Let's see what this does. Okay, so that does... So yeah, that creates the... also creates noise, but instead of like just adding noise to the height map, what it seems to do is it kind of eats away into the geometry in a noisy way, which is quite neat as well. And the surface thickness will probably be how... No, I was going to say how, like... how big the difference between the peaks and the valleys is, but that doesn't seem to be it. And we have got raise, lower, or both. So if I set it to both, it's probably going to have bigger differences between the peaks and the valleys. Not particularly. And then the threshold is what it considers when doing that, so don't set that too low. That's the moral of the story. And the noise scale is, well, just what we... I didn't change the threshold, did I? So threshold, what was it at before? 64? It might have been. So the lower the number, the smaller the noise, right? It's quite nice, but it's also a little unwieldy at first. Then again, everything that's a little awkward and unwieldy is probably more so due to the fact that I'm not used to it. And once again, pressure sensitivity. I'm just going to, hold on. I'm going to hook up my drawing tablet just to test this because I keep complaining about it from like a year ago. And this might have just straight up been fixed. So let me hook up my tablet real quick. It's literally right here. I already have the cable plugged into my PC. The cable is really dying quite quickly, so I need to get a new cable for that. But yeah, like this is full pressure. Well, actually, let's do this in sculpting mode, and this is very. This is not great, actually, for navigation, because I also still do need my mouse. Let's go over here. Like this is just lightly tapping it, and this is full pressure. It's the exact same thing. You can mask areas with the region select brush, flatten brush, then you can choose to raise or lower. That is actually really good to know. It's also good to know that my issues with my drawing tablet still have not been fixed, so that's really, really annoying. Let's take a look here at what you said. You can mask areas with the region select brush. Which one is that? Pattern brush, alpha brush. These are just the different like alpha mats, right? So we've got erase height data, we've got smooth, flatten, ramp, erosion, noise, retop, visibility. Oh, that might be it. Is that it? Let me take a look. Oh, it's probably select. So I can say, hey, choose all this. And then when I try to sculpt, it will only sculpt where that white paint does not exist. Okay, so that is really good. Like having a masking option is like bare minimum for doing something sculpting related. The fact that it looked like for a second there might not be any masking for landscaping seemed too insane to be true. But luckily it is not. So we can just smooth this out real quick. And then we might as well smooth this out. Oh, and then of course select. We can clear selection very easily as well. Quite nice. That then leaves us with these peaks, which we can use the erosion brush on to make look a little bit more realistic and a little bit more pleasant to work with. Okay, we're getting somewhere. I was just screaming, how can you not see the select option? Yeah. What does the copy brush do though? I'm sure somebody will be happy to explain it to me. Mirror. Copies one side of the landscape to the other, so easily mirror landscapes. I don't really think I care about that at all, to be honest with you. That does not strike me as being overly useful. And I'm kind of getting rid of the erosion that I just created. I know. So what we can do, hold on, let's try to like hydro the frick out of this. Like if we, like this looks kind of neat. It's just very easy to lose all sense of scale when working with these things, because like a little bump very easily becomes like this, right? what is the... Like the area that we were just working on and messing about with, like right here. It seems like a small little hill, right? But if I play from here, this is actually like quite a big hill to be dealing with. Like it is quite large. To the fact where I maybe not even can walk up some of these steeper slopes. Yeah, it seems like I might not be able to even get up to the top. Oh, there we go. Okay. So all that. Now, what I do wonder is if I go into my world settings real quick and I set preview grids to enable and I go into F8 mode, can I see the preview grid still? No. Okay, so what I'm wondering though is I have to assume that when I'm standing here, this bit of the terrain just simply does not get loaded and rendered, right? That's how that works. So if I play from here and I look over there, yeah, so it doesn't render those. What I do find to be interesting though is I do see some... Oh, yeah, it does it based on the camera. It does show some of these like little dots still, which is interesting. Landscape sculpting seems did not seem difficult, but I've already tried to use landscape sculpting several times. Some of the tools are really weird and it's hard to make anything good. Yeah, I ran into that last time. I looked into landscaping in Unreal as well. Again, part of the reason that I didn't even look further into it at that time is because where the fuck even am I? No, really, wait, what? Hold on, outliner. Let's go back. I was underground. Okay. Part of the reason was because I didn't really feel like I needed it for what I was doing at the moment, and I still really don't. But also because of that whole like drawing tablet thing, the fact that this is such like a big engine. And landscaping, it is sculpting. I mean, the brush is literally called Sculpt, and it doesn't have pressure sensitivity, or at least it can't register it from like the cheapest, admittedly, Wacom tablet. But it's a Wacom tablet, which is still like the industry standard brand for tablets as well, as far as I'm aware. It's kind of insane. So that really, really annoyed me. If nothing else, just on like a matter of principle. Okay. Let's start adding in some actors and see how they deal with the world partition stuff, because that's honestly what I'm more interested in. And by this point, I do believe that the package that I was downloading probably has finished downloading. I was downloading some forest assets. It still isn't finished. Okay, never mind. We gotta wait a moment longer. We'll get around to it though. We'll get around to it. For now, I mean, we can try to make our own little material for it, right? For the time being, I suppose, if we wanted to. But I don't really feel like I kind of want to do that. But hey, maybe what we could do is we could look into landscaping again, because it's also a painting mode, and I don't really know what painting mode means, to be honest with you. Because what does this even do? I have to imagine that it is... Oh, hold on. I think it's like landscape material stuff, right? I seem to remember something about that. So if I make a new material... Let's call it new material because I'm terrible. Isn't one of the domains like landscape or something like that? No, it's not. Land. Yeah, landscape layer blend. There's a couple of landscape related stuff in materials. Is that something that we can work with? Landscape layer sample. I just don't know what most of this does. Okay, so here we can add in layers. Hold on. Layer name, blend type, preview weight. Okay. So let's just call this new material and say that, hey, new material, you go into the base color. I just want to know what this does. Then if we go into the landscape actor itself, this is, I believe, where we put in the landscape material. So we can say we want to use new material. Everything is going to go. Why is it only this one square? Because I am only working with this one square. That's why I want to go to the landscape actor as a whole, and here we can then make everything black. That's the idea, right? It's gonna take a moment, but now everything is just simply black. Which I don't know if that's a good start, but we're gonna do a thing. And if I now go into paint mode, can I now do anything with these layers? Nope. I kind of hoped that it would unlock those layers in any way, shape or form. There's no layer info assigned yet. You must create or assign layer info before you can paint this layer. Okay, but how do we do that? You can add different materials in each of the layer slots. For starters, just plug in a color. For each node blend, you should give you the ID. In Force 27, you have to reload the level. That is annoying. But we can do that. So for the time being, I do think that just like hooking up a couple of colors is probably a good idea for testing purposes. So let's make the base black, and then we'll have like blue. Can use for like water. It's probably a bad idea to do it like this. But again, I'm just messing about and trying to figure out how everything works. And then we'll do green as the last one, and then we'll do a brown color that we'll just use for like dirt and rock and stuff. Generate layer info in the content browser. In here? Like in the content browser in what is the question then? Let's see. Does not seem to be in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reopen the level and see if that indeed does make a difference. That doesn't seem to have been it. After you make the layer info nodes in your material, I have to assume that this is all we need for now. Just need to generate those layers. Does he need to right click in the content browser and search for layer info file? I don't know. fucking try it. Layer. We've got a landscape layer. Material layer. Specialized material function instance that instances a layer. That doesn't seem like it. Landscape layer seems most reasonable. Maybe in the materials? Landscape layer. Okay, and then what do I do with the landscape layer? Gonna be real with you, this seems kind of convoluted. I mean, I've got this new layer info thing. I can try to open it up, and there we have spline full of modulation, a texture. We've got some physics related stuff, but that's not really what I care about at the moment. I think you make one for each layer. Yeah, okay, but I can do that in a moment. But how do I access that from this painting menu is the first question. Because at this point it doesn't really seem like I can do anything like material paint related. This layer has no layer info assigned yet. Okay, we got a layer info, we just need to assign it. You must create or assign a layer info before you can... I have one created, I just need to assign it. So Unreal, would you be please so kind as to tell me how? Is it in Manage? Feels like it would be in Manage. Might not be. I'm gonna lose my shit if it is in Sculpt. Why is the 2 height map suddenly on every layer? Does that have anything to do with what we just did? Let's right click on a layer. If you're trying to post a link in the chat, I don't think that's gonna work, but it is a good idea for me to just check the documentation real quick. Do I drag and drop the layer that I just made into there? Because if there's no like menu for that, that still sucks. Okay, let's just try to look up some documentation for this. Unreal landscape material layers. Let's take a look at this all together. Landscape, yeah, layer blend, we've got that. That makes sense to me, but how do I apply this? So we've got layer grass, high grass, layer dirt, layer snow, sure. Blending layers, yeah, I don't really care about that at the moment. I just want to know how to apply them. Landscape chords, sure. Interesting to take a look at in a moment. Switch node, again, interesting to take a look at in a moment. I just want to know how to apply this fucking thing. Not going to tell me, is it? Tessellation and displacement, once again. Fantastic stuff to take a look at. Are you or are you not going to tell me how to actually put those on my landscape though? You should now be able to mask and unmask visible from terrain, like in the video below. Yeah, so this is what I'm looking for. Assigning materials to landscapes. Okay, there we go. We've got a landscape material. Assigning a landscape hole material maker to landscape. Yeah, I don't really need to make a material hole. That's still useful to be able to do. But it seems like... Okay, let's just read through this one step at a time. Not from the entire page, just this bit. Find the landscape material that you want to use in your content browser. Select the landscape, either in the viewport on the world outliner, in the level editor panel, landscape section, next to landscape material, click the arrow, so that's just assigning the material. That's literally all there is to it. Yeah, you see, this is kind of why I fucking hate the Unreal documentation, because there's clearly something missing here. I know that I skipped over a lot of stuff up above, by the way, but like either I am missing something or something is not working. Like it's one or the other at this point. How do you make it rain on screen when it's raining? Particle system. Do you mean fall off on the screen? It's probably not. Best is quick start for landscape. Rain camera view. Okay, that's about to rain. Maybe make a selection above the landscape. Maybe the section just above landscape edit layers. There's no section like that. Like there's brush setting. You guys probably can't see too much of what's going on here because of the stream being 1080 and my screen being 4K, which is unfortunate. We've got added layers and we've got like there's nothing I can do here. Oh, in the docs. Yeah, I'm just going to restart the engine because I feel like maybe that will actually fix this, because I remember doing something similar to this at some point and it being not this big a deal. Like it was a little iffy to set up, but it wasn't this convoluted. So I feel like the idea of restarting the level, maybe I just need to restart the engine and it will register or something. Section 5 of the article I linked. If you linked something, I have bad news for you, because YouTube automatically filters out links. So if it's not the same article that I had before me a moment ago, that's not really going to be able to help me. But let's check out whether or not restarting the engine did anything, because that always is a good thing to check out. It fucking did not. Well, that's neat. That's amazing. Landscape quick start Unreal Engine. Let's take a look at that. Unreal documentation. Okay. First okay, I get that. You don't have to tell me how to make an entire fucking project. So you said section 5, so that is this, right? To create a new landscape, click on... Surely it's not this. In landscape... Yeah, I think this is outdated to begin with, by the way. So this might not be the right page, because this is 427, I believe. Yeah, 427. So things have changed quite a bit. But maybe I can set the material still through managing here. Doesn't look like there's anything for material slots. Level of detail override materials. Physics material doesn't matter. Streaming distance multiplier. Landscape material. Some nanite shit. Still good to know that there's nanite stuff in here. Landscape hole material. Let's keep moving along real quick. On this page, maybe we'll get something else. I want to know about the materials. When does it start talking about materials? Because all this other stuff I will read up on. Seems very useful information to have. But landscape materials. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, that's what you mean by section 5 probably. It's this. Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. Layer blend. Okay, material expressions, landscape layer blend. Let's check. Do we have anything of the sort here? We've got the blend type and all that stuff, but we've got nothing other than just the layers that I've created. Oh, but that's just... I'm just an idiot. Never mind. So yeah, this is what I just did, but instead with textures and normal maps, which is fantastic. Painting landscape materials. Section 5. There we are. In the content browser, landscape material, put it in. Apply the landscape material using the use selected asset from... Yeah, okay, that... But I already have a material in there, so that's cool. That's fine. Should look something like this. Fair enough. Now that the landscape material is applied, it's almost time to start painting, but we must first create 3 landscape layer info objects. If you try to paint before you assign that, you'll get the following message. I know. Paint. You need to create 3 landscape layer objects, 1 for each texture. First, make sure that you're in landscape paint mode. In the landscape paint panel under target layer section, you should see yeah, okay, but I don't. So it would be really nice of them to also, like, if it's a quick start guide, and what the fuck happened to my scroll? If it's a quick start guide, it would have been really nice to show them making that asset, because I have to assume, I'm going to pull up the chat back now. I missed a lot probably. Like, I have to assume that this landscape layer is the proper thing that we need. So let's just make like 4 of them. If this magically fixes shit, I would be surprised, but happy. Existing layers only, maybe. Limited counts. Yeah, it's landscape layer info. So they're not assigned, I am aware, but how do I assign them? Because it's surely not in here. Because there's no room for it in there. So where do I assign them? Target layers. Target layers, there we have it, yeah. I kind of feel like this window is just kind of fucking up. But this is really bothersome. Okay, let's just Google Unreal Landscape assign layer info. I can't be the only person that has this issue because it's fucking stupid. Yeah, so this person has the exact same thing. Yes, I solved it. Please tell me how. No, that's not how I solve this. This layer has no layer info assigned yet. You must create or assign a layer info before you can paint on this layer. Right click and... There should be a plus sign to add layers, yeah, but there isn't. It's kind of like that's kind of the issue. What the actual fuck? Like I have everything that the people over here have. I just don't get the layers. Do I need to make a specific layer for painting? Is that what's going on here? Just call this paint. I don't fucking know. I'm just trying stuff at this point. Nah, that doesn't seem like it. I'll just show you, by the way, my stuff. And I'll just also mute my phone because people are going to be texting me, and if I have any idea as to how this is going to go, there's going to be a lot of pings coming through very shortly, and I don't want to bother you guys with that because I'm bothering you with my complaints. Now, let's take a look at what you guys are saying, because maybe that's more helpful than whatever the fuck this is. Can't you just right-click the on the layer above? Like, all the layers do the same right-click, so I don't know. If you miss a, you likely miss a step on the landscape creation side. I didn't create this landscape. This is the Unreal template for open world, which just comes with a landscape that you can change and use and whatever. So I have to imagine that I didn't skip anything there, or that they didn't skip this very important step there. Opening my Unreal project for 27 would be very nice. Okay, go to your landscape material. Please tell me. Please tell me where I'm missing something, because this doesn't make a lot of sense. Unless the issue is that the layer name is none. Like, that could actually, like, be it. Like, is that it? Is that it? If that's it, I'm gonna lose my mind. Because that actually would make sense, because they all have the same name. That it would get confused with that. Yes, that's the issue. Okay, fair enough. Now. Okay, that's on me. I'm I'm gonna be honest with you. That's fair. That's entirely fair. It's annoying that it doesn't give you a warning about that. It allows you to compile that. That is annoying. Probably should check that when compiling. But it's entirely fair. Like, that is on me. So now I should be able to just paint, right? Okay, it's still giving those issues. But at least I can see these right now. So now I can say... use the... Oh, and then it makes a layer info for me, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Cool. I understand now. I understand. I learned a thing. So we just make a layer for every single one of these. I suppose you don't need a layer for info for the base layer. And then we should be able to start painting these in. Maybe you... Never mind, you do. That's... oh, I just didn't make a layer for water, seemingly. So now I should be able to start painting in blue. Okay, we're getting somewhere. You might want to rename those. I mean, it automatically gives them names, right? So they're called base layer info, water layer info, dirt layer info, grass layer info. So it doesn't just call them layer info 1, 2, 3, 4. So I feel like that's kind of fine. Now, I'm not going to paint in all this stuff manually, obviously. I just wanted to get this working, to learn how to set this shit up. And that seems to be working. So the idea now is that I can like paint this side brown. And we can do this with textures instead, obviously. And then with that, painting the grassy bits here green. And then we can play through, and that's not where I was at. But we can see the colors there. Yay! Good stuff. The fact that it doesn't supply a normal default name to prevent this issue is sort of silly. Yeah. Now, that is sort of... like, at least give them the automatic names like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, instead of just all being named none. There's like... the name of their index in the array, just append their index number to the end of whatever that name is, and that should that should prevent issues like this. Or it should be clearer about the fact that you can't do what I just did. Which is fair. Again, it's fair that you can't just have all the names of the layers be the same, especially all of them being literally the word none. That's entirely fair. Like that, I probably should have thought about that a little bit earlier. And when I say a little bit, I mean like a fair bit earlier. I don't mind taking the blame on that one. That's just me being an idiot. Don't change the name, I'm pretty sure it goes haywire. I'm sure that it does. I can imagine that it's not gonna like having that reference fucked up by changing the name. That said though, we're not going to actually use this right now. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to use the default grass material for Unreal and just make everything grassy. If I can find the landscape again. I just wanted to figure this out. I'm not going to do like any painting, especially since painting this kind of stuff takes a while. So we're not going to spend time on that now that we have learned how to actually implement this and potentially use it in the future. in the end, I imagine if you're like making a full open world game, wouldn't that make like for a very complex landscape material though? Because I understand that a lot of things have materials on their own, and not everything in your game is going to be the landscape. Hopefully. But if you like just to have a couple of layers to paint with, if they all need to exist within one material, wouldn't that then mean that that one material needs to include like a rocky surface and a grass surface and a dirt surface all within one material? Because that doesn't seem great. People use it for automatically painting the landscape. I mean, I know you can do like height-based automatic painting as well, right? So what you can do is under a certain because the default material does that. I saw that earlier on today. This is gonna take a while. Oh, it's not this one. What was it called again? Something with Pro in name, I believe. Oh, I'm not going to be able to find it now. Yeah, here, procedural grid. Like this is automatically blue under a certain threshold, and then you could, in theory, also, if I go into this, I could very easily, in theory, say that if we copy this over, I don't actually, haven't looked into how this works. Oh, it just lerps that. So if I make this same setup here, for like higher than a certain value, I could like make automatic snow peaks, something like that, right? You put textures in such a master material and produce a material instance of that, then you apply that to the landscape. Okay, yeah, but that doesn't really fix my issue, and that is the fact that that one material is still going to have textures and normal maps and potential other kind of texture maps as well for multiple different types of surfaces in one material. And if that's just like 2 or 3, I can see that happening. But for like a full game, isn't that like an issue? Because the entire landscape has one material. So how do you scale that up? Because you're not going to make separate landscapes for separate regions of your game, right? If you have an open world game, I imagine the whole point of it is that at least like the ground layer of the entire game is just a one landscape. But how do you deal with that? You can make one material that takes into account cliffs and valleys and such. Yeah, it's really quite neat what you can do automatically. You can stretch it out as many different material files as you want, but you really won't make performance difference for the material rendering. Okay, so really what it comes down to is if you have like 10 different surface types that you want your landscape to be able to use, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that those 10 different surface texture sets are always just going to be in memory. You just kind of have to deal with that. Yeah, since they all have to be processed through the one material. Okay, that's not ideal, but also probably not that big of a deal, I imagine. But that does make it a little bit annoying because it limits the amount of variation that you can do. Like if you have, for instance, a world where you have like a forest and a desert and like a swamp and a rocky area, that then already becomes like at least like 4, 5, 6 different types of surface options that you want to have. But when you're in the swamp, you don't really need that rocky texture sets for the surfaces. So I was kind of hoping that there's either a way to not have to always keep those in memory, or that the material itself maybe deals with that. That would be preferable if the material itself just does that. But to my knowledge, that's not how the materials work. It's not a big deal at all. Well, it isn't until it is, right? Because if you have all of those texture sets be like 512 by 512, I imagine that you can get away with quite a lot. But the moment you start to scale those up into slightly higher detail textures, and you also then create a game with like a lot of biome variation, I can definitely see that becoming an issue quite quickly. Not in and of itself, but it's going to take up quite a bit of your of your texture budgets. And then you're going to add in other actors with other materials. So I don't know. I can see that becoming an issue. It is okay to have the pause menu in memory all the time, you think? Needs to be responsive. So I would think... I don't think it's just 450 megabytes on my player size. How do you make a pause menu that's 450 megabytes? Do you have like your entire menu made out of very high resolution textures, I suppose? Yeah, no, that actually does make sense, doesn't it? I honestly don't think for the most part that 400 to 500 megabytes is really going to be that slow to load in. Like, I'm mostly surprised by the fact that your UI is half a gigabyte. But I also don't think it's particularly that slow to load in. So it probably will be responsive if you just have to load it in anyway. Material functions do solve the problem of breaking parts of your material down, but I don't know about the performance matrix. I have to run the case where that happens to me. Yeah, that's probably actually a better point. Is you might be casting a lot in your UI, which, frankly, if you are casting from your player character to your UI, it's going to be just in memory anyway, and the other way around as well. If you cast from your UI to your player character, and that's the reason it's so big, don't worry, because your player is already always in memory. But probably if you're casting to a lot of other stuff, do look into that. Okay, so all that said, though, let's keep going with my own adventure here, because this is my god. Okay, we have all this. I feel like I have a pretty decent feel at this point for the landscaping. Like, of course, I'm no landscape sculptor, professional at all. And I did see something. If anybody in chat knows about this, please do let me know. Like, I can make a ramp here, and I can make this a little like thinner. Can generate that ramp, and then we can like smooth this out, and that creates stuff, right? So that's kind of cool. That's a really nice tool. I did see a timeline or a time lapse today of somebody like using splines in some way in their landscaping, and I didn't fully understand what they were doing. If anybody in the chat happens to know anything about like what that could have been and what that is useful for, please do let me know. because that seems like it could be that could be interesting to try and figure out. What we're doing today is just me fucking about with open world related stuff, really. So at the moment, that's mostly landscaping and some world partition stuff. I also want to just to test it out. By now, the trees that I had downloading should be like I had a forest back. Let's add that to project. Can you add to project when the project is open? I suppose we're about to find out. Override files. They're already in there. Never mind. Are they in here? Oh, there we are. Yeah, so we should be able to... Oh, it even comes with like a wind system. That's quite nice. I just need the meshes. So let's take like a tree and just fucking put that... Oh, we're in landscape mode. That's probably not what we want to do. Let's just... My god, that's small! Let's make it huge. Just because I want to see it load in and out. That's kind of what we're going for here. So let's make that like 50 times the size. You know what? Let's go drastic. Let's make it 100 times the size. Where is it? Big tree! Very big tree. And as we learned, the streaming in and out of assets is actually done through the position of the camera, not the player. Now this is actually interesting because this is a thing that I was wondering about. Is if a character, in my question it was to do with AI, but now it is the player, gets unloaded with level streaming and then loaded back in. How does it deal with that, right? So we've unloaded them, and now if I go back, so it just simply does not unload the player, but it did unload the ground under the player, so now I'm infinitely falling. Okay. Point taken. So I assume that it just unloads like any other actor when it is... I should clarify before anybody thinks I'm stupid. First and foremost, you're right. But there is an option somewhere in here. For world partition related stuff, right? I thought there should be. World tree. It's a little bit of a sad world tree, to be honest with you. But it would be. I mean, it is a big ass tree. I'll give you that. I honestly wouldn't worry too much about 450 megabytes if it's a one-off thing that you're just keeping in memory, because 450 megs is not that much. But on the other hand side, I also don't think that loading in 450 megs is really that big of a deal. If you're not on like a PC from 1994. Unloaded means no processing. So, if in theory, right, this is the question I had in the Discord as well, but maybe somebody can answer me here. So, let's say I set on like the preview grid. Let's say I have a enemy character that spawns in here, and through just wandering about and just maybe I get unlucky, or maybe I even like make him chase me over the edge here, and then I run very, very far away very quickly somehow. This original chunk that he is from unloads, and a moment later this one unloads as well, and then 2-3 minutes later I come back. Will it have just deleted that actor that existed in this chunk and just respawn it in its initial position here? Or will it have remembered the fact that the actor walked over here, existed here, got unloaded and unloaded back in with the state that it was in when it got unloaded? furthermore, if it's the first one, if I make a actor chase me into this different cell over here, then I unload the initial cell and I reload it, does that then mean I have 2 of that actor? Because I would very much like it if World Partition just kept the actor existing but just not processing, which is what it sounds like so far. And when I come back, it is still in the place where I left it. Because that would probably save me a lot of headache with AI-related stuff. I also recognize that the question I'm asking is probably a pretty niche situation, which is actually, in reality, probably not going to happen that much. I can test that real quick, but that requires me to have an AI, which I suppose I can do. Specifically, if I make these cells a little smaller, that would also help. I think the minimum size is like 1600, right? So let's just make them very small. Set the loading range to also being quite low. Let's see. Okay, so now the world, still like a lot of stuff exists around me. But I suppose I can just move the camera around. Yeah, let's just make an enemy character that's just always chasing the player. That shouldn't be that difficult to do. Blueprint class, character, enemy. Mannequin. Make it this one. Hopefully the animation blueprint for this one also works. Animation blueprint Manny. There we go. I'm going to just do this very, very badly. Move to... Actually, get AI controller. I think it's an AI controller thing, right? Move to actor. Get player character. I know that this is very sacrilege, what I'm about to do. Or rather what I'm doing right now. But I don't really care. This is just for testing purpose. I'm not going to make a behavior tree for this. I think you have to save this transform thing. Game instance, I think maybe... yeah, I don't think... I don't think so. But chase at half speed. Make sure you self... now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this guy close to where I spawn. I also need to add in a nav mesh, which is going to, in and of itself, have to be humongous, I realize now. That's another thing that I need to look into, is how to like make dynamic local nav meshes. I know that's a thing that you can do, I just don't know how. But you don't want to generate a nav mesh over the entire like 4 square kilometer map. That would be insanity. Where is my brush settings? Pretty please. Oh, there we are. Let's just... For now, I'm just going to make this absolutely humongous. Because it's just a 1 and I'm just testing. So, does this cover everything that it needs to cover? I would say probably it does. Question is, do I actually spawn inside of this nav mesh? Or where do I even spawn is the real question. Not there is the answer. Oh, that's the player start. There it is. Okay, no, that's cool. We can just move it over here. There we are. Make the controller possess and begin play and use AI move too. it already has the automatic normal AI controller that possesses on begin play, so I don't need to do that. What I did should work. Like if I just put this guy over here, he should start walking toward me. You see, that simply straight up just works. Again, it's not very efficient because it's running this specific function every frame on this enemy. So that's not great. But at this point, I do think that we're probably in a different cell, right? Are we? Let me check. It doesn't show. It doesn't show. Let's just move over the... Oh, you don't do that. You can't do that. That's fair. You don't jump down steep ledges. Fair. I just want you to chase me down into this little valley over here, and that's where the nav mesh ends, presumably. At this point, I'm fairly confident that we're probably inside a different cell, so let's just move away a little bit. And let's move back and see what that ends up being like. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. So what probably happened is the enemy is also... Wait a moment. Did it just not respawn? I mean, I am falling through the floor. That is fair. Like, I can understand that much. But you got unloaded and just never reloaded. Did it die? What happened to it? You need to make yourself run much faster or him much slower. Yeah, no, but that doesn't matter because the world partition streaming of these world cells is done based on where the camera is, not where the actual player character is. So I don't actually need to get away from him. Like if I detach here, it starts unloading stuff when the camera gets far enough away. And then when I come back, he's still standing there. I am falling through the floor, which, again, is fair. But he's still standing there. I probably just didn't see him a moment ago, because when you're too far away, the shadow doesn't render. Okay, so seemingly, the answer to my question is AI characters are just kept in their state as they were unloaded until they are reloaded. That seems to be the answer to my question, which is great, because that's what I hope for. I just didn't expect it to be the case. But that is... oh, what the hell? That's great. It's fantastic. Now, let's let's go back to the normal world partition settings, because this is insane. Cell size should be nice and big, which I think by default it's set to 256,000. Maybe that's 10 too much. That seems a little bit more like what it was. And then the loading range was not 0. No. What was the loading range? I think something like 75,000. I don't remember. But this seems about reasonable. Can I just generate a new grid? Which has the default settings? Question mark. I think these are the default settings anyway. I'm just going to pretend like they are. We'll be covering why we get errors in Unreal 5 when we try to convert level to portion I don't know what you're asking for, so probably not. If you're asking about like the converting normal levels to world partition stuff, I looked into it today. I know it's possible, and I don't know if you're getting any errors what the issue might be, because I've never done it. Let's also stop previewing this grid because it's annoying. We can remove the nav mesh for now again, and remove the tree, and even remove the enemy. Okay, it's been informative so far. Holy hell, we're already 90 minutes in. Okay, let's keep going then. I think for the landscaping stuff, I understand things quite well enough by now. Also, why the hell is there a tree over here? I want to look into procedural content generation real quick for a bit. And I don't know where I add that. Is that in miscellaneous? It feels like a miscellaneous type of thing. Or maybe it's just a blueprint. No, it's not a blueprint. Foliage? Probably not, right? No. Oh, tool presets maybe. No. Texture? No. Oh, procedural content generation. There we go. PCG Craft. Let's take a look. You know what we're going to do? I'm going to go take a very quick bathroom break, and then we're going to take the documentation page for this, and we're going to look at what that says rather than just jumping the fuck in, because that seems like a really, really bad idea. So I'll be back in about a minute after my quick bathroom break. Okay, there we are again. Oh, my cables are getting all tangled up. That's not good. That's not good. Okay, everything works now. Getting the error conversion failed. Check log for details. Yeah, so probably not going to be a particularly helpful answer, but I would probably check the log for more details, because I don't know either. Okay, procedural content generation. I had a documentation page for this opened up before we started, because I felt like we might get to the point where I got bored of the landscaping stuff, which took longer than I expected because we spent like half an hour trying to get the fucking materials to work. And then... Okay, so let's take a look at this page that we have here. Procedural content generation framework is fucking awesome. Important concepts and terms. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can read with me. Points. 3D locations in space are generated by the graph, are often used to spawn meshes. Points contain information about their transforms, their bounds, color, density, steepness, and seed. They can be assigned user-defined attributes. Point density. The value used by a variety of graph nodes. This is represented in the debug view as a gradient on each point. A density of 0 is black, density of 1 is white. Required setup. I have the plugin installed. The procedural node graph is a central piece of content generation framework using a format similar to the material editor, special data flows. So yeah, it's just a blueprint editor thing. I can get that. creating an asset, right click on the content browser, we did. Choose the name, I don't care. Editing the procedural content generation graph. We've got all this stuff here on the left, I already saw that. So that's the node palette. The 2 is debugging, nice. 3 viewport, details panel, and attributes list. Okay, cool. Similar to working with blueprints, you can add nodes by clicking and dragging. I also probably should open up my chat again. Where did I leave my chat? Hold on. There we are. Okay, so the graph is made of a series of nodes. You don't say. Each one performing an operation that contributes to the final results. These nodes are divided into the following categories. Blueprint contains blueprint-related nodes. This includes common nodes to execute user blueprints derived from the... Okay, that's interesting to note. Color contains nodes affecting the color on points. So I assume you can like influence nodes and like RGB data and just kind of use that RGB X, Y, Z, whatever to then distribute things on those points. At this point, I'm still not entirely sure what this color does. So I'm assuming it's just 3 channels of information that you can use to decide whether or not things should do shit. Debugging nodes, fair enough. Density contains the nodes that affect point density, also fair. Filter contains nodes that filter data based on criteria or per point. I/O contains nodes that control interaction with external data. For the time being, we don't really care about that too much, I don't think. Metadata contains nodes that interact with attributes, whether on points or on an attribute set. That sounds interesting. More for a visual on what your nodes affect, what colored areas, I believe. Okay, so that seems like something that I'm probably going to just like ignore until my systems get complex enough to the point where I'm going to need it for debugging purposes. But for right now, that seems like a luxury that my brain is just going to ignore. Params contains nodes that control retrieval of parameters from actors or blueprint variables. It's a nice. Sampler contains nodes that generate points from a source of spatial data such as volumes, surfaces, and meshes. Spatial contains nodes that create spatial relationships between data, change their internal spatial data or retrieve data. These two don't seem that different to me, kind of be honest with you. But this is probably more general data. This is specifically like location and scale data and stuff like that. Spawner contains a node that creates data or places actors at given points calculation. Subgraph, makes sense. Transforms contains nodes that modify transform information on points. Okay. We have a procedural content generation volume. So if we look for procedural content generation volume, where was my player start again? I just want to, yeah, let's place this around the player start. So when we look at this, we should have a option in here for what graph that we want to put in. Is that on the component itself? That's on the component itself. That makes sense. And then on the brush, we should have some way to, yeah, just make this a bigger brush. So this, I'm assuming this influences the areas where it's going to like do the content generation. So it should, if I say place trees down around this area, it should do it within this box now, right? So let's just do a thing. Do you give me any examples at all? Creating simple forward volume. Exactly what I had in mind. Amazing. Create a new project. Yeah, you don't need to walk me through that. Like, sometimes it skips over steps that I'm like, okay, well, this was important to note. This was important to tell people. And then other times, in the middle of an article, it tells you how to create a project. Where I'm like, I don't know. If you're looking at a procedural content generation plugin for Unreal, you're probably familiar enough with the engine, or you probably should be familiar enough with the engine to know how to make a project, right? You don't need to tell me to do that. Anyway, we can make a graph assets. We already did that. Okay, creating the points. I'm going to put this on my other monitor for now, because otherwise I'm going to click back and forth a lot. So I'm just going to read out what the thing says, and I'm just going to do it on my screen. In the graph editor window, add a surface sampler. So that's a input related thing, right? So we can say inputs, we use the landscape, and then we can surface sample. The bounding shape is probably going to be the volume that we made. Click the down arrow to expand it. That was kind of self-explanatory. Select the surface sample and press D to toggle debug rendering. Do we just do that? Oh, debug rendering. Okay, cool. Back in the editor window, select the volume and click the generate button. It doesn't say that I have to hook it up into the output yet, so I'm not going to, but it probably wants me to. So let's generate stuff. Oh, it actually does. It does the thing. Okay, cool. So this just randomly scatters points, is what it does. Which is the first most important step, obviously. And it does it aligned to the surface normal, which I'm hoping there's some way for me to tell it not to do that. Let's see if that's just an option here. Points, allow density on points, point steepness, points per square meter. So if I increase this, this should be 10 times as many points in theory then, right? So generate. Clean up. Generate. No. That's not what that does. Unless I need to compile this somewhere. No, that's not what I meant to do. What if I set this to unbounded? Just for shits and... Okay, that's what happens when I set this to unbounded. Clearly. Okay, cool. That's interesting. That certainly is interesting. Add variation. Okay, so in the editor, you can select the surface sampler and add more options. The point per square meter, yeah, that's what I was messing about with. Point extents and looseness properties. Are you going to tell me what those properties do? Doesn't seem like it, but probably if I just hover over it, they will have tooltips? Question mark? Please tell me they have tooltips. Why do this? Looseness. That's not a particular... Like, unbounded. I immediately knew what that did, right? It has a tooltip to explain what it does. Looseness, very vague term. No tooltip to be seen. We're just going to increase this to like 10 and see what it does. What it does is make me only generate like 2 things. And it feels like it might now only be generating on surfaces that are very flat. is that what this does? So set that to 0.1 force regen. If we set this to 2, this might, it kind of just feels like a density slide, I'm not gonna lie. That's a moment. Yeah, it does not explain at all what looseness does. Not sure. Okay, so what does it say? Let's just keep reading on. Points per square meter, points extends, and looseness property in the detail panel. Adjust the points per square meter to 1.15 to add more points into the space. So, in theory, that should mean if I set this to 1, it should add a fuck of a ton of points, but it doesn't really, does it? The point extend property controls the size of each point's bounds. So change the X, Y, and Z to 50. Okay, so let's change the X, Y, and Z to like 20 for now. Because the issue might have been that the points were just too big. So now there's a lot of them. And if I set this back to 0.1, do I actually see a... I do see... Okay, so this is indeed the density. This is the size of them. So let's... set that size and then set this to 0.2. I think it's at 1.5, but I don't care. That seems somewhat reasonable. Maybe 1.5 is actually better. Yeah, let's stick with that for now. Yeah, the boxes were too big. Looseness property determines how closely the generated points conform to the grid shape. So, okay, so if I set the looseness to 0, they will just generate on a grid. Yeah, seems like it. So this is a slider that goes from 0 to 1, right? Let's set this to 20-20-20 again. Real quick. And just observe. So this is rather loose. And then if I set this to 0, it should conform more so to a grid. Honestly, I can't really tell. I'm sure in practice, at some point, that's going to show itself to be a little bit more evident. Next, add a transform points node. I will do that. Transform points. In this node, you can add additional movement, rotation, and scale that changes your points within a defined range. Connect the output pin to the surface sampler node to the input pin of the transform points node. Disable debug render on surface sampler and enable it on the points. So we can disable it there and enable it there. Force regen. And this does what exactly now? Because it doesn't seem to be doing too much yet. Oh, at some random... I didn't do anything with it yet, that's why. So we want the rotation in the Z to be a maximum of 360. So it just has literally any possible rotation in the Z axis, which adds randomness to it. That's nice. It's neat. It's cool. Sweet. It spawns randomly rotated things, so we can also influence the scale. That's exactly what I was about to do. I wish you could just set these two being floats. Oh, they are by default locked though, so that's nice. So the scale for minimum will be half, and then 1.4 for the max scale. And again, if we force regen that, we now have variation in our scale too. So we have a decent amount of variation. Now we can spawn in meshes. This is the stuff that we're here for. In the editor, add a static mesh spawner into the graph viewport. I will gladly do that. So static mesh spawner. select the details panel and locate the mesh entries. Click the plus button to add a static mesh spawn. We have mesh entries. There we go. And then we can make it randomly pick one of a number of different... Holy hell, that's a lot of things. Okay, let's just add a tree. Like this tree over here. Let's add that one. Click descriptor, drop down menu for static mesh and select the tree that you want to spawn. In this example, we'll just use random tree. You can add additional static meshes. Okay, so for now it's not going to go into any of this shit, which there's a lot of options. Holy hell. Okay, that's kind of intimidating, not going to lie. But we'll figure it out at some point. Oh, it also has weights to them. So I can say we want this second oak tree and then add a third oak tree here. Like this one. And then say that this one should have a weight of 2. So it spawns as much as the other two combined. And then we debug this one. And it's a lot of fucking trees, isn't it? Which all seemingly have some issues with rendering. That might just be because I'm doing this in debug mode. Let's connect this up. So if we just put this into the output and stop doing this debugging. Yeah, okay, so it was a debug related thing. So now we've got a way too dense forest. But we generated a forest alright. So if I just play the game now, it crashes the engine. Naturally it does. I don't think I saved that. That was pretty easy to rebuild. They should have collisions also. We'll check that in a moment. I was going to check that, but then the crash happened. And now I probably need to redo some of that stuff. Well, it has a grass material now. That actually works out better with the with the stuff, with the things. Procedural content generation, volume. Where is... Let's just put the forest over here. And I think it said that you can just use the scale to make the bigger bounds. So let's set this to like 20 by 20 by 5. Yeah, so this thing doesn't really have anything going for it, but it allows us to do this again. So we can add some transform. Was it transform points? I think it was transform points, right? I'm gonna go with transform points and then static mesh spawner, and that then's going into the outputs. I think this was it. So let's add in those mesh entries again. The bottom one with a weight of 2. And this time before we run the game, I'm going to save. I should have done that to begin with, of course. So spawn in those. And those. And then scroll down a little bit until we get to like this one. rotate them in any which way, make them half their size up till 25% bigger. And then let's also say their minimum offset will be minus 100 units, so that they all have a little bit of height difference to them as well. I think that will work out decently well. Okay, with that, we go back here, and now we can generate, and that generates us a whole bunch of trees, which is nice. Some of them are a little too tiny. Okay, I might have mistyped something, because that's a big difference. No, one of these meshes is just smaller than the rest. Okay, let's see if we crash the game again. We do crash the game again still. No, we don't. It's just taking a moment to load in. Where is my generated forest? There it is. Don't worry, I did save beforehand. So let's walk into our very well created forest. There's got to be more to this. Like, there's got to be a way to like add in something like splines to like make a path through these woods. But let's check. They do have collision, so that is a good thing. And honestly, this feels kind of cool. The fact that I'm just like walking around in the woods now, and I can walk out of them, and then we've got those trees just hanging out over there. Obviously, it's quite square. It's quite a square forest. We prefer if there's a little bit more like jaggedness to the edges of it, but I'm sure that we'll get to that point at some point or another. But now I gotta figure out which one of these fucking meshes is so tiny, because one of them seems to be really, really small. This one is, let's see, 2700 high. Then we've got this one, which is... yeah, this one is the tiny one. So let's just remove that one for now. We can just simply delete this out of the array. Just have two different types of trees. Force regen. Let's clean up and generate again. And now it should... no, we still have small trees. Let me also change the camera speed to something a little more manageable. Okay, that's maybe a little too slow. Somewhere in between. No, not even slower. That's horrible. Don't do even slower. We'll just increase this to like 4. Yeah, remove the play. You don't need to remove the player start. You can just play from here. Still takes a second. You don't need to remove the player start to do that. It's kind of weird. That means that this one also is a tiny tree. And now everything is big trees. And these trees feel very like non-nanite. Am I correct in thinking that? Let's check this out. Enable nanite support. No, it is. They are nanite enabled. They just suck. Or maybe my PC just sucks. But I am also streaming, to be fair. Oh, nanite has supported trees for a while. And even if it didn't, it specifically didn't support foliage. Which, this is not foliage. These are just instant static meshes. So it supported that a long time from the start. But it also supports foliage. I think since Unreal 5.2 it has supported foliage. So even if I used this in like the foliage system, it would be fine to support those. Which means that like foliage, like trees and stuff like that can be very much more detailed now. Like we could, if we wanted to, actually start modeling leaves on trees now. I don't know if that's particularly a productive use of those resources, because it still does take some amount of computing, of course. But you could very much do that instead of only having leaves ever just as textures, if you really, really wanted to. Vertex displacement is supported now by Nanite. Yeah. Vertex painting, though, still not so much. Which I can kind of understand. Because displacing vertices that are being dynamically generated is one thing, but having the vertex colors from the original model then somehow also calculated for the on-the-fly generated geometry, I can see why that's a nightmare. And why that is not supported yet, and maybe never will be. What's slowing you down is the collisions. Oh yeah, that might be it. But no, because it's also quite sluggish in here, and I don't think the collisions really should be impacting me in the viewport, right? But there's a good chance that these trees, whichever one, I think it's this one. Like, let's see the collisions. Your simple collision is... it actually has pretty decent collision. Like, that's not too bad for, like, a tree. In the mesh spawner, not a tree. No, in the spawner. Which collisions do you mean? Collision preset is set to ignore everything. So if that's what you mean, I kind of figured, but it's good to double check. The volume itself doesn't do any collision stuff. On the graph where you put a tree to be spawned in. You can set it to none. Yeah, but then the things don't have collision. The tree still should have collision. And no matter, like, either way, those collisions, I don't think are even calculated when you're just, like, in viewport mode. So that's not the thing slowing me down, because I'm also sluggish like this. I can set it to none to test, but I think this is a GPU thing anyway, not so much a CPU thing. Let me open up Task Manager here and set them side by side. Yeah, no, I'm just running out of video memory, as is usually the case, because I only have 6 GB of VRAM, so I probably just need to set this to being medium, so they use slightly less intense stuff, and well, that kind of fucks up the look of of those shadows, doesn't it? But this already is much smoother, and I used this again instead of just saying play from here. Still not exactly an ideal frame rate, I will admit. But even playing through that, like, if you look at my CPU, which collision is CPU calculated, if you look at my CPU, like, it's really not doing anything, and my GPU is kind of struggling. So it's unlikely to be a collision-related issue. But I'll do it. But again, those trees do need to have collision. Like, they're set to block all dynamic because that's like they need to block you from walking through them. Like, if I do this, this is I fucked up again. I keep doing that. And this is why we get rid of the player start. Like if I now play from here instead, my performance isn't like particularly better, but I can now just straight up walk through trees. So like even if that was the issue, that's like that wouldn't be an acceptable fix, because now my forest doesn't have collision. That's kind of problematic. It's just my PC being a piece of shit. Is really what the issue is. But let's do something fun and add some more stuff, because what I now wonder is I want to like also like surface sample again with like a different random seed, obviously. Then I want to generate transform points again. I want to spawn static meshes. I just want to like add in some twigs or some rocks. I don't even know. Do I have twigs? Something like that? Like twig? Rock? Mossy rock. Can I... do I need to like combine? That's... I'm a genius. Okay, maybe I'm not quite a genius, because this is... giving me an error. Hold on. It's not supported type string. Oh, that's a rotator. Can I just put multiple things into the output? Is that how that works? That might be how that works. Hold on. That's just straight up how that works. So we now also have some rocks spawning in. Okay, cool. Have you adjusted the world partition? I assume WPO's world partition something to turn off at a certain distance. Yeah, but the distance is quite big. So I probably could go in the world partition settings and say, hey, you... Like it's loading quite a big area. So I probably could get away with loading... a fair bit less, like this. And that might improve my performance in game. I'm just messing about anyway right now. It doesn't really matter if this doesn't perform all too well. What also might help is the fact that I don't think my landscape has nanite enabled. I think that might help as well. Let's see. Nanite. Enable nanite. We probably need to build the data for that, and that's probably going to take a while, isn't it? Yeah, see, now my CPU is chugging along. Now my CPU, like, it's time to get working on this shit. It's yeah, that takes a while with such a big map, I'm sure. Probably should not have... Oh, hold on. No, that's... Wow, never mind. Go through that real quick. Save. Good idea. Good idea for me to save. Probably should have done that before building the nanite geometry, but... This might save a little bit in terms of video memory, because I don't need to render as many... Yeah, it's just my VRAM in general is kind of fucking me at the moment. But this seems to perform a little bit better until... I don't know, let's... Stats... FPS. Like, this is 30 FPS. Yeah, the moment those trees come into view, it really does ramp up quite a lot. Well, it goes down quite a lot, rather. It's probably just because those trees are relatively high quality. If I go back into my landscape and I just don't use a textured material for this, that might free up a little bit of memory for right now. So if we just go back into procedural grid like this, like that immediately, maybe not immediately, but that seems to improve things. Actually, no, it does not. I'm just low on video memory. I'm running this on a RTX 2060, so like I have a pretty shitty GPU, which you can definitely tell right here. I do wonder though if I go to low, obviously this shouldn't be any sort of problem anymore at all. Like yeah, at low, I can deal with this very easily, and this becomes 120 frames. I just wonder which setting is actually the thing to do that. Is it shadows? Shadows does quite a bit, that makes sense. Global illumination really doesn't matter that much. Reflection probably not. Textures? No. Effects not really too much either. It's mostly the shadows that are really killing me, seemingly. Which is weird, because that isn't video memory related. Huh. Okay, interesting. There's a setting in PCG where you set these assets to a set distance limit on their vertex displacement. Yeah, it might also just be the fact that the vertex displacement is quite heavy in general. So let's check out the... Holy fuck, that's ugly. If we take a look at how big these textures are. Yeah, you see, the tree trunk itself has a 4K texture. That's just one material. So these things are just fucking insane in their materials. How big are the leaves? Base color. I swear, if the leaves are 4K... The leaves are fucking 4K. The leaves are 4K. Look, I appreciate the fact that you give me the options. I appreciate that. But don't you think that's maybe a little overkill? I can reduce them, I know. So I appreciate the fact again that this package does come with 4K textures for everything. But I can reduce them to lower resolution. For now, it's kind of fine. I don't really care. It's just funny. So let's try to... where did I put that graph? There we go. So instead of trees, let's change this to something else. Just see what we have. Environments. We've got like a couple of bushes. Bushes sounds good. Common winterberry bush. Let's do bushes. That also does improve performance. If you use optimization view mode in your viewport, you'll see shader troubled areas. Yeah, I know, but that's not really what I'm looking at right now. I'm trying to play around with this procedural content stuff. It's just, I was curious what was causing it, but I honestly don't care. If I'm going to use this in like a actual workflow for an actual project, I probably won't be using an asset pack with this high fidelity anyway. Level of detail advanced. Yeah, so again, I don't really care. I just want to experiment a little bit more with this stuff. Okay, so where does the surface sampler come from? Because I would very much like to filter. Can we can filter, right? So if we we want to disable the outputs. If we do that. Is that it? Why are you being a bitch? Hold on, are these individual assets or components now that I can move around? Maybe it is. Okay, so anybody care to explain to me why this is now not showing debug stuff? Oh, it is. Is it? Hold on. It is for those. It's just, oh, because it's... So what is this output good for? Because you don't need to hook up the output for it to actually put in those meshes, apparently. So why have that output? What does that do? They probably do come with 1K textures and 2K textures as well. And if nothing else, you can just downsample the textures in the texture itself. But again, I'm not really interested in looking too deep into that right now. I honestly don't care. What I do wonder though is this density thing. That value, what does that mean? Because it doesn't seem to be related to any sort of how close it is to something else. So is the density value literally just a random value between 0 and 1? Data transfer. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Actually. That does make sense. Because I can filter these on density. And now it only will spawn in the things with density higher than 0.5. And if I set this to 0.8, it will filter out... My bad. It will filter out a lot of things that are just not that wide, right? That's neat. What is a point filter? We can target the density to filter on. So that's the same as a density filter by default, seemingly. What I would like to do is I would like a thing where it generates it in a circle. So we have a density thing where in the middle it's very likely that they get spawned in, and the further out we go in a circle, the lower the density becomes until the circle ends before the bounds, and if that makes any sense. That would be ideal. But I feel like we might not be able to get to that tonight. that seems a little... seemed a little ambitious for the time being, maybe. Yeah, let's Google real quick though what density means, because I'm not entirely sure on that. Seems like is just a like random color value. So Unreal procedural content generation density. What does it mean? Point distance might actually more or less do what we need it to do. If we can add noise to that, that would be pretty much what we need, probably. Discard points on distance, spatial distance. Source would be. Can we just like get the center? Distance for like points. Attribute vector operator. Distance to density. Distance to neighbors. What is distance to density? Let's just check it out. Because that is a thing that we can do. Check it out. So, oh. Okay. Now everything just has a very high density. It's probably not what I wanted to do. Probably not. Compute distance 2D, sure. Gradient scale 100. What is gradient scale? Just 1. It's regen. Everything's still just very white. Density mode. Add? I don't know. This doesn't seem to be doing what I had in mind. Like, at all. It is doing something though, because if I don't preview that one, everything has different density. It's just this probably doesn't do what I think it does. Let's look at distance. Like distance to neighbor. That's a lot of stuff to look at. That's a lot of fucking stuff to look at. Yeah, I think at this point I kind of get the basics of how to spawn in like static meshes, and there's a lot more to this, of course. But I might look at this all at some other time, because there's a lot of this shit. Spline sampler. Hold on, that's what I want to check out real quick. Is I want to be able to add a spline. Yeah, I want that's okay. That's one thing that I do want, is be able to create a spline. Which will filter out points around it. So for now, let's just disconnect this stuff as well. So what does this do? What does that look like? That looks like a spline that goes through every single one of these points. That's what that is. And if we just like create spline without any inputs, do we like get a spline that we can work with? Because that's what I would like, right? If I could make a spline that could like create a path through the trees where nothing spawns. Create points. And maybe let's take a look if I can find something real quick in Google. Unreal procedural content generation, spline. I'm not going to be looking up a video live on stream. That doesn't seem like a cool thing to do. If you want to see a video, go watch the video. Don't watch me watch the video. Let's just debug seeing this spline. Create components. Do we do it like that? I don't know. Again, this is probably going to... Yeah, that has a very weird spline. So that's certainly not it. Attribute set containing multiple parameter overrides must name match perfectly. Attribute type object pointer a actor target actor. Don't know what that does. Arrive and leave tangent attributes. I don't think that's going to help me too much either. No. Yeah, I'll have to watch those videos. And just generally do a little bit more research as to how all of this works. Maybe this documentation page is going to help me out a little bit. Procedural content generation framework, data type references. Spatial data, composite data, attribute sets, volumes, surfaces, lines, points. I understand the basic idea of those. No, that article does not help me at all. Well, I think that's gonna do it for today, then. Where did I put my stream? Where did I put my... Somewhere in all of these tabs. I've got a lot of fucking tabs open at this point. I think that's going to do it for right now. We played around a little bit with, number one, a question that I had with procedural content generation, with some sculpting for the landscape, all that kind of stuff. I feel somewhat more comfortable in my understanding of how to put this kind of stuff together now. Even though specifically for the PCG, there's a lot of stuff that I still have to play around with and experiment. So maybe sometime again soon we'll do some more of this. Who knows? For now, though, it's been a good one. I've been alive for about 2.5 hours now, so I'm going to relax now. And I'll be back on Friday with probably either some level design stuff or low poly modeling for my asset pack. I don't know which one yet. Something. One of the two. Yeah, PCG is a very deep world. I can tell that already. It's kind of melted my mind.